Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. In the quiet hills of New Mexico, a man seeking peace faces an unexpected war. No guns, no bombs, just forged documents, fake lawyers, and a woman who thinks she rules the land. What starts as a neighborly dispute spirals into a battle for freedom, and one man won't back down. The first thing I noticed about the place wasn't the house, it was the silence. 4 acres of land, rimmed by pines and jagged red rocks, tucked into the foothills near Taos. The wind up here moved differently, slower, deliberate, like it had nothing to prove. That's what I wanted. After 15 years of dragging junkies out of basements and deadbeat landlords into courtrooms as a federal enforcement officer, I was tired of noise. I bought this land to get lost on it. The house was an old rancher, built sometime in the 70s. It needed love. Half the siding was bleached to hell, and someone had tried to renovate the inside with laminate floors that peeled like onion skin. But it was mine. No mortgage. Paid in full. No HOA. That was crucial. I made sure of it. Every parcel document, survey, and county record made it crystal clear. This land sat well outside the jurisdiction of any homeowner association. The neighbors were spread out, thankfully. But people in these hills still talk. My nearest neighbor, a retired forest ranger named Cliff, was the first to mention her. "You met Karen yet?" he'd asked over the fence one morning as I was laying irrigation lines. I shook my head. "You'll know when you do. She's HOA Queen of Sunset Mesa Heights. Thinks she owns everything her binoculars can see from her deck. Calls the sheriff if your trash bin doesn't face the same direction as everyone else's." "Sounds charming," I said. He snorted. "She once made a woman repaint her barn because the red clashed with mountain tones." I figured that was someone else's problem. Sunset Mesa Heights was a gated community a mile down the road, fenced off and tucked behind a ridge. My land was older than their zip code. I didn't expect to hear from them. Then came the envelope. No return address, but the glossy embossed seal of Sunset Mesa Heights HOA stared back at me like some kind of royal decree. Inside was a letter printed on thick paper, the kind usually reserved for weddings or restraining orders. It read, "As per a unanimous vote by the Board of Sunset Mesa Heights Homeowners Association, your property has been identified as falling under the extended stewardship of the HOA in accordance with our updated territorial aesthetic mandate. You are hereby notified to submit a membership application and compliance plan within 14 days. Or vacate the premises to allow for harmonious community realignment." I actually laughed, out loud. Then I read it again, just to be sure I wasn't having a stroke. Extended stewardship, territorial aesthetic mandate. It sounded like something out of a dystopian HOA Bible. There were vague threats about compliance penalties and liability implications. And the kicker, this decision is final and binding and cannot be appealed. The only thing it was binding to was my trash can. I grabbed a red Sharpie, scrawled directly on the bottom of the letter. "Your fantasies have no legal weight. This house was built in 1973, 30 years before your HOA was founded. I am not part of your community. Do not contact me again." Then I stuffed it back into the HOA envelope, taped it shut, and dropped it in the outgoing box with a second layer of duct tape and a smile. But something about it itched under my skin. The kind of itch you get when someone taps your badge in a bar and tries to talk jurisdiction. I've been around enough counterfeit court orders and fake eviction notices to know when someone's testing boundaries. So, I walked the perimeter that night and rechecked my cameras. All 4 were online, motion activated. I even installed a new one facing the driveway, just in case our friend Queen Karen decided to pay a visit. 3 days later, a white SUV parked just outside my gate. She didn't step out at first, just sat there, engine running. I watched from inside, sipping black coffee. Finally, the door opened. A woman in her late 50s stepped out in a matching tracksuit, clipboard in hand, followed by 2 men, one holding a leather portfolio and trying way too hard to look important. Karen had arrived. She walked up to the intercom beside the gate and pressed the button 3 times in rapid succession. "Mr. Craig," she said, her voice clipped and performative. "I'm here on behalf of the Sunset Mesa Heights HOA to initiate visual inspection protocol and open dialogue regarding your pending compliance review." I didn't respond. "I understand your confusion," she continued, "but per our extended boundary ruling, your property is now under provisional aesthetic observation. I sipped my coffee and let the silence drag. She turned toward the two men behind her, muttered something, then looked directly at my new driveway cam. With no contestation submitted, the HOA has voted to reabsorb this property. It is now officially under HOA control. Then she turned, looked directly into the lens and added, "If Mr. Craig does not comply, we will begin documentation for removal." She left the same way she arrived, confident, rehearsed, and completely deranged. That night, I downloaded the footage, backed it up in 3 locations, and emailed a copy to an old contact in the DA's office. I wasn't going to play nice anymore. I also sent Cliff the video. His reply was just 3 words, "Told you, man." 3 days after the HOA envelope incident, I was back in my workshop refinishing a busted cedar armoire I'd picked up at an estate sale. The smell of linseed oil and dust kept me in a good mood. That didn't last. Around 10 in the morning, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. I muted the sander, wiped my hands on my jeans, and glanced at the driveway monitor. The white SUV was back, but this time it wasn't alone. A second vehicle, a silver Lincoln with tinted windows, pulled in behind it. 3 people stepped out. Karen, of course, wearing a blazer over another one of her pastel power jumpsuits. Next to her stood a balding man in a dark suit, holding a slim leather briefcase and oozing fake authority. He adjusted his tie like he was about to address the Supreme Court. The third was a younger guy in khakis with a GoPro strapped to his chest, filming everything like this was some kind of twisted episode of Property Wars. I didn't open the door. Instead, I flicked on the mic from the security panel. "State your business." Karen looked up at the camera with the kind of smile that belonged on a stepmother kicking orphans off a cliff. "Mr. Craig, I am here with legal counsel to serve formal reclamation documents. This is Harry Milton, legal representative of Sunset Mesa Heights HOA." Harry nodded like a smug bobblehead. I raised an eyebrow. "You mean the same HOA I'm not a member of?" "The same one that has no jurisdiction here." Harry stepped forward and pulled a packet from his briefcase. "In accordance with HOA Resolution 42B and under Administrative Clause of the Unified Aesthetic Covenant, we are initiating reversion of property status and community integration." It sounded like he'd swallowed a thesaurus full of legal gibberish. I didn't reply. Karen, undeterred, walked right up to my gate, reached into her bag, and pulled out a laminated notice. She stuck it to the wrought iron bars with clear packing tape right under the security camera. The paper read, "Notice of reclamation, property identified as non-compliant and absorbed under HOA protective jurisdiction. Mandatory vacation to follow pending community consensus." I watched her step back with pride, arms folded like she'd just planted a flag on the moon. "You've got 14 days to vacate," she called out. "After that, we initiate peaceful repossession." The guy with the camera zoomed in dramatically. Harry Milton gave the camera a rehearsed nod, like he was filming an ad for bad lawyering. I didn't take the bait. I let them leave. When they drove off, slowly, like they wanted me to chase them, I walked out, carefully peeled the notice off my gate, and took it inside. The first thing I did was scan the document. It was a Frankenstein monster of fabricated bureaucracy. Fonts didn't match. The signature line at the bottom was typed Karen L. Strandish, HOA Enforcement Chair, which wasn't even a real title. There was also a seal, some badly photoshopped crest with a ribbon that said, "For the Harmony of the Heights." It looked like something a middle schooler would make for a civics class, but what really caught my eye was the footer. It referenced a legal firm, Milton & Weiss, Property Advocacy Division. I'd never heard of it, so I did what any semi-retired officer of the court would do. I dug. No law firm by that name existed in the state bar directory. No registration, no listing, no website, nothing. I ran the number printed on the document. It forwarded to a burner voicemail line that hadn't even been personalized, just a robotic voice. "You have reached the legal offices. Leave a message." I called my buddy Darren over at the county recorder's office. He owed me a favor or two from my enforcement days. "Can you check on a guy named Harry Milton? Claims to be legal counsel for Sunset Mesa Heights HOA." Darren laughed. "Oh boy, that name's been popping up more than it should. He's not licensed in New Mexico. Hell, he's not licensed anywhere. We think he's some kind of freelance paralegal running scams for overreaching HOA boards." That's when it clicked. Karen didn't have HOA support, at least not officially. She'd hired this guy on her own, under the radar, probably with funds skimmed from the association's dues or her own savings. The paperwork was theater, a bluff. She was gambling on intimidation and hoping I wouldn't look too closely. Well, she'd lost that gamble. I printed copies of everything. HOA notice, fake seal, fake legal references, footage from the camera of Karen taping it up, Harry posing, even the camera guy doing his best Scorsese impression. I put together a full file and drove it down to the sheriff's substation. The deputy at the desk took one look and whistled low. "This some serious HOA voodoo," he muttered. "You want this escalated?" "Yes," I said, "to the DA. And make sure Judge Benton sees it. He'll want in." And I knew Benton would want in. He and I served together years back when he was still green. He hated fake legal threats more than I did. By the time I got home, another notice had been dropped in my mailbox. Same style. This one said, "Community petition in progress. HOA neighbors rally to reclaim outlier parcel for unified visual stewardship." And taped to it, a list of 15 names. Most of them I didn't recognize. Probably scared neighbors Karen had hounded into signing. This wasn't over, not even close. It rained the next morning. That kind of slow, quiet mountain rain that seeps into everything and makes the trees smell like clean bark and wet stone. I stood on the porch with a thermos of black coffee watching the low clouds drift over the ridge. Peaceful. Almost enough to forget that someone had tried to fake an HOA land grab on me less than 24 hours ago. But then I heard it, the soft metallic clink of someone messing with my fence gate. I walked inside, pulled up the feed from the Western camera, and there she was. Karen. Alone this time, but holding a bright red sign under one arm and a long zip tie in the other. She slipped past the fence line like she belonged there and headed straight toward my mailbox post. She didn't even glance at the cameras. Just zip-tied the sign to the post and took a photo of it with her phone. Then she turned, marched right back to her SUV, and drove off. The sign said, "Visual Oversight Area. HOA Aesthetic Board Survey Pending. Property temporarily under Sunset Mesa Heights Evaluation Authority." It looked official, I'll give her that. Bold font, HOA logo, even a QR code at the bottom. I scanned it later. It just linked to a broken Google Doc titled Community Boundary Initiative Phase 2. She was spiraling, but she wasn't done. By noon, I started getting texts. First from Cliff, then from a woman named Linda who lived a few houses down the ridge. "You know there's a petition going around, right?" Cliff wrote. "Karen's telling people your property is dangerous and non-compliant." Linda added, "She came to my house this morning, said you were putting up unapproved structures and harboring unregistered vehicles. Wanted my signature to reclaim the parcel for community safety. I told her to leave." Over the next few hours, more neighbors chimed in. Karen had apparently spent her morning canvassing like a political candidate hopped up on HOA amphetamines, telling people my house was a legal anomaly, that it was causing confusion with new buyers, that the community had a right to absorb any property within visible range of the HOA's upper ridge, as if this was a damn feudal kingdom and she was trying to redraw the map. Around 3, I checked my doorbell camera again. This time it wasn't Karen. It was 2 teenagers in Sunset Mesa Heights polos walking up my driveway, one holding a clipboard, the other carrying a laminated folder. They stuck another notice on my front door and jogged off like they were delivering pizza to a haunted house. This one read, "Final reminder, petition for community reunification in progress. Failure to comply may result in legal referral for property reassessment." Reunification. Like my land was East Berlin. I'd had enough. I scanned everything, documented the kids, the sign, even the bad QR code. Then I walked into my office, printed it all, and added it to the growing Karen file, now thick enough to dent drywall. After that, I made 2 calls. First, to the sheriff's office, asking for an official report to be opened for trespassing and unauthorized signage placement. They told me they'd escalate it to the prosecutor's liaison. Second, to Judge Benton. He picked up on the 3rd ring. "Yeah, Benton. It's Craig. I've got something that's going to piss you off." It took me 15 minutes to explain everything. Karen's fake signage, the forged petition, the fake legal rep, the kid-run intimidation campaign. I didn't even get halfway through before Benton cut in. "I've seen enough." "You what?" "She tried to file some of this crap with the zoning board last week. Didn't realize I sit on the advisory review panel. I flagged it immediately." I paused. "You think she's crazy or dangerous?" "Both," he said. "And reckless. You don't try to commit property fraud in front of a judge and expect to walk away clean. I'm drafting the warrant request myself. You're serious? I'm coming up there this weekend. Make sure your cameras are clean. If she sets foot on your porch again, we're ending this. I hung up and just stood there a moment, staring out at the mist. She really thought she was winning. By nightfall, Karen had posted a video to Nextdoor titled "Taking Back Our View. HOA Citizens Stand Together." It featured dramatic aerial footage of the ridgeline and a slow zoom toward my property with tense piano music over it. Like I was some blight to be cleansed. I watched it twice, once for evidence, once for the laugh. But it wasn't funny anymore. She'd crossed every line. I kept expecting her to stop. Maybe it was naive. Hell, definitely naive. But part of me figured that after the sheriff got involved and Benton was drafting up legal firepower, Karen would at least lay low. Take the hint. Retreat back to her overpriced stucco fortress and scream into throw pillows like a normal petty tyrant. But no. 2 days after Benton's call, I got an email from a local freelance journalist named Tessa Alvarez. She introduced herself politely, said she was working on a feature about HOA overreach and property boundary disputes in northern New Mexico, claimed someone from Sunset Mesa Heights had tipped her off to a rapidly developing community conflict involving land stewardship and aesthetic integrity. My gut told me exactly who her source was. Still, I agreed to a call. I had nothing to hide. We spoke for about 15 minutes. Me laying out the facts, legal title history, the confirmed boundary lines, Karen's fake attorney stunt, the sheriff's report. Tessa sounded professional, neutral, but I could hear the click of keys in the background as she typed. An hour later, her story dropped on the local outlet's website. Headline: Maverick homeowner faces pressure in HOA land dispute. Who owns the mountains? The piece was surprisingly balanced, but it still quoted Karen directly. This isn't about control, she said. It's about protecting our visual and ecological standards. When one property deviates so drastically, it affects everyone. We're simply working toward voluntary reintegration. Voluntary. With fake legal notices, trespassing, forged petitions, and a black market rent-a-lawyer. The article went semi-viral locally. People on Facebook started arguing in the comments. Some cheered me on. Others, mostly from Sunset Mesa, parroted Karen's language. Shared viewshed. Community character, land harmony. The word harmony was doing an awful lot of heavy lifting for a woman who had been stapling illegal warnings to my fence. But I didn't respond publicly. I didn't need to. Benton had arrived. Saturday afternoon, a beat-up Chevy Tahoe pulled into my driveway, and out stepped Judge Marcus Benton in jeans and a windbreaker. I'd known the man for nearly 20 years, but I'd never seen him smile so wide. "This place still looks like freedom," he said, glancing around. We sat on the porch, drank coffee, and reviewed the dossier. I gave him the full package, printouts of every HOA threat, the fake legal filings, screenshots of Karen's Nextdoor propaganda, and the stills of her trespassing and issuing faux decrees with hairy discount attorney Milton. He shook his head slowly, flipping page after page. "She thinks she's untouchable," he said. "Is she?" "Not for long. I've issued a bench warrant application. DA's office is waiting for her next violation." Next? Meaning, we're not kicking the door in, not yet. But if she so much as steps onto your porch again with that HOA nonsense, she's done. We didn't have to wait long. The very next morning, a black SUV rolled up to my gate. Karen stepped out in a full-length cream coat, sunglasses, and a ridiculous HOA lapel pin, like she was the ambassador of suburbia. With her were 2 activists. A 20-something woman with a smartphone on a gimbal, and a guy carrying what looked like a portable PA speaker. And, of course, our friend Harry Milton had returned, holding a fresh briefcase and wearing a smug grin like a man playing dress-up. They walked right up to my fence and buzzed the intercom. "Mr. Craig," Karen announced, voice amplified through the speaker. "We are here to initiate the final stage of administrative reintegration. In accordance with the will of the community and the Visual Unity mandate, this property is now recognized as HOA managed land." I didn't answer, but the cameras were rolling and Benton was sitting in my living room, watching the feed with a look that could have frozen lava. Karen gestured to the girl with the camera. "Begin the record," she said. "We are documenting the peaceful transfer of stewardship." Harry opened the briefcase and pulled out a tri-fold presentation board like he was unveiling a timeshare pitch. On it were aerial photos of my land with HOA logos superimposed and phrases like Future Community Garden Space and Integration Zone. They were trying to film a propaganda event on my damn porch. Karen walked up to my gate, reached into her coat, and produced another one of her laminated legal notices. This one was gold-trimmed. This property, having been deemed visually invasive and legally dormant by the Sunset Mesa Aesthetic Oversight Board, is now subject to HOA protection. She taped it to my gate. That was the moment. Benton stood up, grabbed his jacket, and said, "Showtime." He walked out to the front door, crossed the porch, and strolled down the path toward the gate. Karen was mid-sentence, staring into the camera and declaring herself guardian of community values, when Benton stepped into frame. She froze. Harry flinched. The camera woman kept filming. "Karen Strandish," Benton said, voice firm but calm. "You are in violation of multiple state laws, including criminal trespass, falsification of legal documents, unauthorized use of public insignia, and attempted property fraud." Karen turned toward him, blinking in disbelief. You can't. Who are you?" "Judge Marcus Benton, 10th Judicial District, and I personally reviewed every document you forged, including the one with my signature on it." Karen's face turned the color of cottage cheese left in the sun. Harry tried to interject, raising a hand. "And you," Benton snapped, "are impersonating legal counsel. We've confirmed you have no license to practice in New Mexico or any other state." Two sheriff cruisers pulled in behind the SUV. Sirens silent. Doors opened. Karen's voice cracked as she sputtered, This is a mistake. I was trying to help the community." "You'll have plenty of time to explain that," Benton replied, "to the judge who isn't me." Officers approached. One read Karen her rights. She was too stunned to resist. They cuffed her gently, out of pity, I guess, and led her toward the car. Harry tried to back away, but one of the deputies was faster. "Nice briefcase," he said, taking it. "Let's see what you're hiding." As they pulled away, the girl with the camera kept filming until a deputy told her she could turn it over now or later under subpoena. She chose now. The gate was quiet again. Then Benton turned to me and said, without even a hint of sarcasm, "You got any coffee left?" They thought it was their moment of triumph. That morning, I was on the porch staining a bench, trying to ignore the itch in my jaw that usually came before a migraine. The sky was clear, that soft New Mexico blue that looks like it should come with a warning label. I knew Karen wasn't done. She couldn't just walk away after the spectacle from the day before. People like her don't understand what stop means. They only hear "not yet." So when I heard the whine of tires on gravel and saw that now familiar HOA SUV pulling into the road just outside my gate again, I didn't even flinch. I just wiped my hands, grabbed the remote for the cameras, and poured myself another cup of coffee. I had a feeling this was going to be good. Karen stepped out wearing what I can only describe as a white ceremonial trench coat. She had on a pin with the HOA crest, oversized sunglasses, and held a clipboard like it was a royal decree. Beside her was Harry Milton again, somehow still free, this time in a different suit, grinning like he'd just won a scratch ticket. With them were two HOA supporters, one of them a guy in his 60s with a cardboard sign that said, "Enforce the aesthetic," and the other a middle-aged woman carrying a potted succulent like she was going to offer it as tribute. And then there was the journalist. Tessa Alvarez had arrived. Karen waved her over with the grace of a cult leader welcoming new followers. Tessa hesitated but followed, camera bag slung over her shoulder, recording everything. Karen turned to the gate, stood directly in front of my driveway cam, and said loudly, "Today marks the formal and final reclamation of Parcel 17B by the Sunset Mesa Heights HOA. After extensive community petitioning and legal review, we now restore this property to its rightful community standard." She gestured to Harry. He stepped forward and opened his briefcase like he was about to unleash ancient scrolls. Inside were 3 thick folders labeled Transfer Documentation, Visual Compliance Records, and, God help me, Ceremonial Verification. Karen pulled a new plaque from the briefcase, a gaudy gold-trimmed monstrosity that read, "This property now belongs to the Sunset Mesa Heights HOA by order of Aesthetic and Historical Reintegration Authority." She handed it to one of the HOA cronies, who solemnly walked up and zip-tied it to my front gate. It swung slightly in the breeze. Then Karen turned to the camera and delivered what I could only describe as a monologue. This property was once a blight, a deviation from the shared spirit of our ridge. But today, we reclaim it, not with violence, not with force, but with unity. This is a moment for our children, for our view lines, for our harmony. I choked on my coffee. Then I heard tires again. 2 sheriff cruisers rolled up quietly behind their parade. One parked behind Karen's SUV, the other alongside Tessa's car. Nobody even noticed until both doors opened at the same time. And then, as if God himself wanted to add insult to insanity, out stepped Judge Benton, still in jeans and that windbreaker, except now he had the official seal of the court in his hand, printed on thick ivory stock. Karen turned, froze mid-sentence, and blinked like someone had hit her with a flashbang. "Ms. Strandish," Benton said calmly, "you were explicitly warned not to continue unlawful action on this property." Karen straightened her back. "This land has been deemed compliant under HOA jurisdiction." "No," Benton cut in. "This land is outside any such jurisdiction. Your actions today constitute further trespass, attempted fraud, and violation of an active cease and desist order." Harry stepped forward, clutching his briefcase. "Judge, if I may—" "You may not," Benton said, already holding up a warrant. "Harry Milton, you are now under arrest for impersonating legal counsel and facilitating fraudulent filings. We've confirmed you're not licensed in any jurisdiction. That makes this not just trespass, it's conspiracy." That wiped the smile off his face. Karen stammered, stepping back. This isn't fair. You don't understand. We had support, community backing. There were signatures. People want this." Benton stepped closer, handed the warrant to one of the deputies. "Intent doesn't erase illegality," he said. "You misrepresented your authority, falsified documents, intimidated neighbors, and attempted to usurp property ownership. That's not community building. That's criminal enterprise." The 2 officers moved in. Karen tried to backpedal, waving at Tessa. "You're seeing this, right? They're arresting me for caring." Tessa kept the camera up but didn't say a word. The handcuffs clicked shut. Karen looked around like she still expected someone to save her. Maybe the HOA board, maybe a mob of like-minded control freaks to charge in with garden shears and color swatches. But all she got was silence, and the sound of Harry's briefcase hitting the ground as the other deputy put cuffs on him too. One of the HOA cronies dropped the succulent and bolted. The other just muttered something about needing to speak to an actual lawyer and walked off toward the SUV. Karen was loaded into the cruiser without resistance. But just before the door shut, she looked at Benton and said, "You can't take this from me. You have no idea what I've done for this neighborhood." Benton didn't even blink. "Yes," he said. "Now we do." The cruiser drove off slowly. The gold plaque still hung from my gate, crooked and swinging. Benton turned to me and handed over a copy of the warrant package. "You might want to keep that," he said. "Makes a hell of a conversation starter." The dust didn't settle right away. Karen's arrest lit a small fire in the local community, the kind that smolders in HOA meeting rooms and grocery store parking lots. People whispered. Some defended her, saying she meant well. Others acted like they'd never known her. The board of Sunset Mesa Heights went silent. No official statement, no press release. Just a polite mass email postponing all scheduled HOA meetings, pending internal review. But behind the scenes, it was chaos. I got a call from a neighbor 2 lots down, George, a retired tax attorney with a love for bourbon and drama. He forwarded me a string of HOA emails that had leaked from a group chat between board members. Apparently, they'd had no idea Karen had been working with legal counsel. Several messages contained variations of, "Who the hell is Harry Milton?" And Karen said this was board authorized. Was it? It wasn't. Karen had hired Harry independently, paid him in cash through a personal check that eventually made its way into evidence. She'd pulled HOA funds without approval, more than $3,000 marked as community integration outreach that no one questioned until now. Turned out the HOA's treasurer, an overworked nurse named Tamara, had signed off on half of it without reading the line item descriptions too carefully. Karen had manipulated her, guilt-tripped her into thinking the funds were for community landscaping grants. She never knew they were paying for a man with fake credentials and a bad haircut. Meanwhile, the DA's office moved quickly. Benton didn't wait for a grand jury. He filed a direct motion for criminal charges: felony trespass, fraud, conspiracy to defraud, impersonation of a public officer, Harry had literally introduced himself as district legal counsel in one of the petitions and tampering with public's records. Karen was arraigned in county court 2 days later. I didn't go, but I read the transcript. She tried to argue that she was operating in good faith as an agent of residential order. The judge wasn't impressed. Neither was the prosecutor, who shredded her defense with a single line. You created a parallel authority, funded it through deception, and executed a hostile campaign of legal cosplay to seize private property. Bail was denied. She was remanded pending trial. Harry, for his part, folded like wet cardboard, claimed he thought the documents were demonstration templates, and that Karen had told him this was all symbolic, not legally binding, but emails said otherwise. He'd actively modified county document templates to add fake clauses, copied Benton's signature from a scanned court ruling, and built a fake firm website. One page, no contact info, made on a free template platform. He was charged too. Less than Karen, but enough to make him flip and offer testimony. Sunset Mesa Heights was forced to conduct an emergency board review. 3 members resigned immediately. Tamara, the treasurer, offered a tearful public apology in a community Facebook post, admitting she'd ignored red flags and trusted Karen too much. Then came the audit. County officials began reviewing HOA finances after multiple neighbors came forward with complaints. Hidden dues, misused funds, Karen's odd beautification invoices, like $500 for ridge harmonization decor, which turned out to be a giant wind chime no one ever saw. It didn't take long. 6 weeks after the arrest, a judge issued an order to dissolve the Sunset Mesa Heights HOA entirely. The wording was surgical. The HOA has demonstrated a consistent pattern of overreach, financial mismanagement, and disregard for property boundaries. It no longer functions as a lawful or constructive community entity. Gone. No more forced paint color approvals. No more holiday light guidelines emailed at 6 a.m. No more threats about mailbox conformity. Just peace and property. I was sitting on the porch again when Cliff came by with a 6-pack and a grin. "You see the notice?" he asked. I nodded. Saw it. He handed me a laminated printout just for the hell of it. A big red headline. Sunset Mesa Heights HOA officially dissolved. We toasted. It tasted better than any courtroom victory ever had. I didn't expect the silence to feel so strange. After the storm of arrests, court filings, resignations, and HOA collapse, life on the ridge returned to what it should have been all along. Quiet, peaceful, mine. No more uninvited visitors. No more notices taped to the gate. No more pastel blazers or fake legal threats. Just the wind through the trees. The chirp of my security cameras picking up actual wildlife instead of HOA drones. And yet, the calm felt eerie. It's like when you defuse a bomb and then stare at the wires for too long, wondering if you actually got them all. But then the letters started arriving. At first, it was just 1 envelope, then 2. By the end of the week, a dozen. All neatly stacked in my mailbox, no return addresses. Inside, apology notes from neighbors. Some were handwritten, full of shame and crossed-out words. Others were typed, formal, stiff, like job resignation letters. I didn't know how far she'd taken it. I only signed the petition because she said you were a squatter. She made it sound like you were hostile. We were afraid of her, too. Some included cookies. One guy left a bag of homemade beef jerky on my porch with a note that read, "No hard feelings." I wasn't angry. Not really. People are pack animals. Fear makes them stupid. And Karen had a gift for weaponizing fear behind a curtain of community values. What struck me most was the relief in their words, like her downfall had unshackled them too. A week later, I got a certified letter, this one from the county clerk's office. Inside was a copy of a court-issued summary judgment, the official ruling in my favor. Plaintiff Ethan Craig retains full and undisputed title and rights to Parcel 17B, exempt from any past or present HOA jurisdiction. Any and all claims of territorial annexation by Sunset Mesa Heights HOA are hereby nullified and legally void. Attached was a court seal, notarized and signed, by Judge Benton, of course. The next day, I bolted a fresh, weatherproof plaque to the front gate. Not HOA style, no pastels, just a clean, brushed steel rectangle that read, "Private property. This land is not subject to HOA governance. Violators will be prosecuted under state trespass law." and beneath that, a smaller plaque. Built in 1973, free ever since. Cliff helped me hang it. We didn't say much. Just cracked a couple beers and nodded as it gleamed in the sun. But there was still the matter of compensation. I hadn't planned on it initially. Part of me felt like the win was enough. But then I saw the legal fees. Even with Benton doing half the paperwork himself, there were filings, court costs, public record searches, hours burned writing up responses to fake notices, time lost fighting something that never should have happened. I filed the lawsuit the next week. Civil claim for damages caused by fraudulent legal action, emotional distress, defamation, and costs associated with defending my property from attempted seizure. The number I requested, $250,000. It wasn't even about the money. It was about the principle. You don't get to run a suburban coup and walk away with a slap on the wrist. Harry, under plea deal terms, forfeited a portion of his earnings, whatever was left of them. Not much. Karen's assets, though, were another story. Turns out she'd been living off a mix of HOA funds and a trust left by her ex-husband. That trust was now subject to civil claim. Her defense attorney tried to argue that she was not mentally fit to understand the nature of her actions. The court-appointed evaluator disagreed, citing extensive planning, coordination, and a pattern of authoritarian entitlement. In other words, she knew exactly what she was doing. After 2 months of back and forth, they settled. I received the full amount, paid in installments through Karen's estate, garnished via court order. The first check arrived in a plain envelope. I cashed it. Used part of it to replace my old gate system with a top-of-the-line security setup, cameras with AI tracking, license plate recognition, and solar backups. And then I bought something I hadn't owned in years, a hammock. Set it up between two ponderosa pines just uphill from the porch. When I lay there, swaying gently, staring up at the open sky, it finally felt finished. The day the last check cleared, I took a walk along the northern boundary of my land, the side that overlooked Sunset Mesa Heights, or what used to be Sunset Mesa Heights. The signs were still up, but they looked tired. The once pristine mailboxes stood a little crooked. The bulletin board at their gate, once filled with HOA reminders and passive-aggressive flyers, was empty now. Just a sun-faded corkboard with a single rusty pushpin stuck in the middle, like the ghost of bureaucracy past. A pickup pulled up beside me on the road. Cliff leaned out the window. You see, they're calling it just Mesa Ridge now. Drop the Sunset and the Heights. Real humble these days. I nodded. What happened to the HOA bank account? County froze it. What was left went to reimburse a few folks Karen fined illegally. We didn't say much more. Didn't have to. That evening, I installed a small metal plaque right below my gate camera. Simple, etched black letters on steel. This is America, not the Kingdom of Karen. And underneath, in smaller font, here ended her reign. 2 weeks later, a clip from my security footage, the one where Karen got cuffed, ranting about reunification, made its way into a viral TikTok. Someone had added dramatic music, subtitles, and a slow zoom on Benton's face when he said, "Now we do." The video was called Queen of Nothing Gets Dethroned. Last I checked, it had over 8 million views.